Hi.
Hey, Joseph. I'm going to start with a little preamble here, and then we can get into the questions. So for our viewers, Joseph Ostraff's new work in the duo exhibition Liminal reflects his own process of excavating internal material and personal histories. The finished paintings, with all their appropriated shapes and layers, are the visual residue of an internal effort to listen, process, and feel. Each piece alludes to layers of a human presence, time, and the results of choices made. So, Joseph, what I'd like to do is just ask you a little bit more about your creative and artistic process broadly relative to the work. And so let's start there. If you could just talk a little bit about your creative process.
Right. I would say that the process probably starts with kind of a gathering of shapes that capture my attention. So I create quite a library or pool of shapes from different sources, both natural and human-based.
One second, Joe. I think we're having trouble hearing the audio.
We're just going to try it again, Joe. Hang on 1 second.
Okay. All right.
Hey, Joe. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Wait, try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so Joe, if we could get back to that, and sorry about that. Can you just iterate on your creative process and how you came to this body of work?
Right. So it's always about collecting shapes that initially just attract my attention, and then laying them out and maybe putting some thought into why I'm attracted to those things. I'm also very attracted and provoked by layers of information that have been out in the world. They've developed over time, and then in my process I accelerate that feeling of layers that may have accumulated over quite a bit more time. So those are the two basic things that I do.
So are you looking at, when you talk about accelerating the process or accelerating the passage of time, what do you mean by that? Tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, so, if you're like in a subway and you're walking there and see a layer of signage that maybe is torn, abstract remnants of billboards over 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. I'm very interested in those accumulated shapes and patterns and surfaces, and so, of course, I'm not going to take that long to paint, so I'll build up a number of layers, 12, 13, a dozen layers or more, and then accelerate it in my studio instead of waiting for years for that sort of accumulation.
So you're taking a process that in its organic state has taken perhaps decades to formulate,
right.
And you're influenced by that, or you're duplicating. What's the?
Yeah, so I'm committed to that rich kind of vocabulary, and so these paintings, each one that you're looking at, has at least a dozen or more layers. And in those cases, I'll start much more liberal and broadly, putting down paint, making marks, and then over the process start selecting and deselecting shapes that I want to continue through and to be part of the finished piece.
And I think it's interesting that you sort of see the detritus that's left behind in these forms as I would gather quite optimistic. There's this sense that there's been action and resource and opportunity in this decay.
Right. Yeah, I don't see it as necessarily a negative at all, but more just evidence of human endeavor and activity, thinking. You know, one of the places I love to walk around is Seattle. I went to school up there, and up on Capitol Hill are these poles that have years of posters stapled onto them, and they look almost like Christmas trees. They're so thick. Right. And each layer was announcing a cool concert or something going on, even an art show or something. And so they kind of tell a whole history. And I'm not a historian, but I do find interest in kind of the evidence of our activity and maybe even a sense of gratitude for what people have been doing and what they're doing, and wanted to be an additional contributor to that dialogue.
I think you mentioned also that it's not always an urban context. Sometimes you'll be walking with your kids or with people that you are close to in environments, and you'll come across something, and then you'll kind of process that form over a period of months, and right. Then come to a creative process through that.
Right. Yeah. That's right. To me, any shape is open for possible use. I'm in Ireland right now, and there's a beautiful kind of tension and stress between the natural things that I'll find on the beach when I'm walking, or on a walk into the woods or on the grass cliff areas. But also you'll find like bits of like a fishing buoy or something that was bright pink, smashed and kind of polished just like a stone, that's right there on the beach next to kelp and stones. And I find that interesting to see this intense color along with more natural subdued colors. And then in the paintings right behind me, there's kind of this relationship between these strong cycles. Here in Ireland, the weather changes about 4 times in a day. And so everything from the environment situation, the atmospheric qualities, and then the contrast between the types of shapes and their origins all become something I think about.
Yeah, I'm very interested in this fellowship that you're involved in Ireland. Can you speak a little bit about how you came to that and what the process is there?
Yeah, just really briefly, first of all, artist residencies in general only allow the artist to be there, and I'm married and I have 6 kids, so I haven't been able to participate in that. Then several years back, I found out about the one here in the Baldwin Glen Foundation program, and they actually provide a home and allow you to bring your family with you. And so I applied. It's an international pool. They have 70 to 100 people apply, and about 10% are juried in to accept that to extend an opportunity. And so I came several years ago for the first time and spent 2 months here, and now I'm back for the second time now.
Do you have any particular heritage there, or is it just a sort of a geographical thing for you?
Could you repeat that question? I didn't quite hear the...
Heritage to Ireland, or is it just something that...
Well, the opportunity was here, but of course it's an amazing place with they usually have several other artists here at the same time, and I've developed some really lifelong friendships from that. And the people in Ireland are amazingly hospitable and kind to visitors, and there's a real love for the arts here. So my wife and I will be up at the elementary school next week, actually doing a one-day drawing project with the primary school right here in our little village, Ballyglen, or Ballycastle.
Yeah, you also are an art academic, and I'm wondering what you bring to your own work as a result of that. Do you find that there's a give and take in that world? You know, that the students are an influence for you? How does that shape into your creative process?
Well, maybe beyond the academics, I have a natural inclination to collaborate with people. Like the paintings that you see behind me are actually a dialogue between my wife and I. She makes natural inks, and so I paint. She drops in some ink, and I paint, and we've been doing layer after layer in response to each other. That collaboration is really important to me. Meeting other people and working with them, including them into my processes, always keeps me kind of on my toes. I'm getting a little bit more on the senior side, and yet this process of getting out, getting into a new community and interacting with them just keeps me sharp. And their ideas and their way of seeing the world is different. Even the way they phrase their language helps change the way I see things. I'm always looking for people who are seeing things in a different perspective than myself.
Wonderful. Is there anything, Joseph, in particular that you'd like to say additionally about this new body of work? You mentioned seniority, which I thought was interesting, because you are getting into sort of late mid-career, and the work is very reflective of your mastery. Anything in particular?
Well, the two pieces that are behind you, on each side of you, actually percolated into what they are from a lot of current events globally. I find myself feeling very frustrated and unable to really contribute to some of the most significant challenges we're seeing on the news and globally. And this tension between first aid and radioactivity, you know, the things that are toxic within our communities now versus those that are peacemakers and healers. And I want to be on the side of a positive person and be more tolerant. So these paintings are me just playing with that idea of reminding myself that getting along with people who have very strong feelings that are different than mine is an important challenge, and tolerance and positive civility is something I'm really working towards at a time when there's so much contention. So the paintings are kind of a personal documentation of those thoughts.
Yeah, I love the strength of this piece, and it feels like almost like a reference to a world map on the underside of it, and then obviously the first aid and the nukes and the contrast.
Yeah.
Yes,
exactly.
What's going on in Western Europe right now?
Yes, yeah, you couldn't have said it better. And there's irony in that, because I have ancestry both from Russia and the Ukraine, and that doesn't mean I'm directly connected to the politics of our time, but I am genetically connected to two very complex and beautiful communities that are being turned upside down by poor leadership, and so it means something to me.
Right. Amazing. Well, Joe, I think we're going to just go ahead and throw things open to the audience. If there are any questions from our viewers or from our listeners, please feel free to type in a question and Joe can answer it. Anything?
No, not seeing any questions.
Okay, I see a question about the medium I use in these paintings. So should I answer that right now?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I start out my paintings with water-based, acrylics to build up the first 6 or 7 layers of paint. And as you're looking close, hold it right there for just a second. You can see some of that blue that's coming through, sneaking through, probably was that base layer. And then after that's completely dry, then I'll go back in with oils, which take longer to dry, as you all know. And so I accelerate the ability to build layers on the paintings by starting with the acrylic base first and then finishing with oils.
Any other questions from the audience? Okay. Well, Joseph Ostraff, I think that wraps it up. The show that's up now, in concert with Aaron Cohn, who's another wonderful artist, is running. The opening is tomorrow evening, which is the 20th of May, beginning at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, and will run through the 5th of next month. And we look forward to hearing and seeing more from everyone. And it's a very exciting show, so I would encourage people who can come to come, and people who are not in town to access it through New Art, through our website. And there's lots of exciting things to see. Joseph's work is very, very exciting. It's always exciting, but this new body of work is really quite thrilling. So we're delighted to have him. And we thank him very much for his time. Thank you, Joseph. Have a great time in Ireland, and we look forward to seeing you when you're out.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to everyone.